Good evening, thanks for joining me. This week, what do breweries, political parties, analgesics, school lunches, kindergarten economics and opportunistic self-promoters have in common? An exclusive claim to being the real Australians, that's what. Perhaps the sourest note of the Olympics was the dreadful hometown war cry. Dreadful, I say, given its origin. Oi, oi, oi was the taunt of the skinhead neo-Nazis as they bother-booted their way through the East End of London looking for Pakistanis to brutalise.
The skirmishes have been going on all afternoon and the march is still going on.
It would have been less offensive for the Olympic crowds to sing TV commercials. What could be more Aussie than that? A national anthem, in truth.
Come on, Aussie, come on, come on. Come on, Aussie, come on, come on. Come on, Aussie, come on.
Aussie, there's been a quid in it ever since, by jingo.
Aussie kids, how we fix this. Aussie kids, how we fix kids.
In later versions, the Aussie kids' complexions darkened just a little, but not enough to be bad for business. The appellation was good business in the case of the Cockney Hungarian Aussie Joe Bugner, but not quite so appealing in the case of successful fugitive Aussie Bob Trimboli. Tweed hat sales dived, yet enthusiastically adopted by a moneylender.
I want you to ring your bank and demand a better deal. Give it a go. Ring your bank. And if they won't come to the party, ring us at Aussie Home Loans.
All small beer, but some of the exclusive claims to Australianness are very big business. Henry Ford's Epigony wouldn't have got away with it, but General Motors of Detroit, Michigan, always has.
We love football meat, 5 kangaroos and Holland cubs. Football meat, 5 kangaroos and Holland cubs.
As Barry Humphries once said, isn't it nice of them to let us call it Australia's own car? Australia's own British airline practices child abuse to sell itself. Well, it's abuse to make them sing this mush. And never stand between a politician and the Australian flag. Whatever their political stripe, I won't say doctrine because they have none, the flag is indispensable proof of their ability to understand and serve us. Oh, sorry, I don't know how I mixed him up with our national leaders. And one of the major problems with the Republic debate is the future of the flag. So the monarchists wrapped themselves in it, funny that, wrapped in the flag is an American expression for cynical xenophobia. But Australians don't have the taste for irony that they claim. Well, I can think of a few who don't, at least. I'll come back to her. There's nothing new about exploiting nationalist sentiment for sales. This, for a maker of work clothes, dates from 1906.
Made in Australia.
From Australian cloth.
By Australian workmen.
For Australian people.
And Australians' first campaigns started at the same time when they were part and parcel of the White Australia policy. For decades after Federation, Australia remained a branch office of British financial and pastoral institutions, and nobody felt threatened. But when the emphasis swung to the United States after World War II and later, when Asian investment mushroomed, resentment became a marketing strategy, and it still is.
I'm as Australian as Empire, you know. I'm one of those who paints white on their nose. I'm part of the whole heart and soul. I'm as Australian as Empire.
Notwithstanding the Caltex takeover, Australia's own car enlisted Australia's own self-promoter.
Holden is the only car I'll allow to advertise in Australian Geographic. I've bought one. How about you? Hurry, factory bonuses on selected Holdens must end August 31st at your Sydney Holden dealer.
Dick Smith was happy to give away some of the General's shillings. The others were being TT'd to Detroit post-haste because it gave him the added benefit of flogging
Dick Smith's Journal of Discovery and Adventure,
which, he protested,
was founded not to make money, but to put something back into our country.
and the $41 million for which he sold it to Fairfax was obviously an unintended windfall. One way Smith avoided putting something back into our country was by having it
printed by Dai Nippon, Japan.
That was the fine print, very fine print. More of Smith later too. Our greatest commercial patriots would have to be the breweries. I
I play football without a helmet. I like beetroot on my hamburger. I ride in the front seat of a taxi. I believe this is a prawn, not a shrimp. I believe the world is round and down under is on top. I believe Australia is the best address on earth and Australians brew the best beer on earth.
Good old Aussie advertising agency creativity. How original, how self-mocking, how Australian.
I can proudly sew my country's flag on my backpack. I believe in peacekeeping, not policing. Diversity, not assimilation. And that the beaver is a truly proud and noble animal. The toque is a hat. The Chesterfield is a coach. And it is pronounced Z, not Z. Canada is the second largest landmass, the first nation in hockey, and the best part of North America. My name is Joe, and I am Canadian.
The Canadian version was first, it was funny, and it was ironic. The Australian rip-off pale ales by comparison. I dare say a mature nation's commercial sector would be comfortable with its place in the world and have the confidence to sell its products on their merits, but not us. We have fed the nationalist blackmail of Australian-made or Australian-owned or Australian-produced, not yet unloaded by Australian wharfies, and all the flag-waving is only making lawyers rich, and that can't be good.
Painkiller maker Heron Pharmaceutical is free to run television ads declaring it is Australian-owned after a judge yesterday threw out an injunction attempt by rival company GlaxoSmithKline. Federal Court Justice Peter Healy said,
To restrain the use of the advertisement would be to deprive Heron of a key part of its commercial weaponry.
Both are gentle on the stomach. Both are preservative-free. And both are sealed for safety. So, which one do you take? Personally, I take the one that's made by an Australian-owned company.
Well, they didn't actually say it was made in Australia, did they?
Heron tablets are made in the firm's Brisbane plant, but Heron's best-selling product, the new Capsule painkiller, is made in the US by a foreign-owned contractor.
So this is what they put on the box.
Heron, wholly Australian-owned.
And now back to Dick Smith. The General Motors salesman from whom Holden bought advertising space held his hand up for Bob Hawke's 1986 campaign to revive a stalled economy.
We drive an Australian car. We buy Australian products. Even our books are printed in Australia.
But not your magazine. And what's an Australian car? A Lloyd Hartnett? A Lightburn Zeta?
Let's be positive and cut our overseas debt to the bone. Look for this symbol, and if you think the Australian made is as good, go for it.
As good as National Geographic, does he mean? From there, Dick decided to appropriate the campaign to his own use. General Motors and Dai Nippon were unceremoniously dumped, and he was girding his skinny loins to fight the evil empire.
I'm angry. With this type of violent advertising directed at our kids, the foreign-owned Kellogg's Nutrigrain is set to take over from Wheat Bix as Australia's favourite breakfast cereal. But we're fighting back. It's with Dick Smith Nutribites.
You have to admire the extent of his self-indulgent self-promotion. Arriving from New Zealand by balloon, clutching his product for the camera. So good a salesman is he that in all seriousness, Dick Smith won a Sunday tabloid's poll to find the most popular president for an Australian republic. Could there be any more persuasive argument for the Parliament electing the head of state? Having sold his imported electronics business for $25 million, then his magazine business for $41 million, he lit on nationalism as a product.
Dick Smith was horrified to discover that an Aussie icon like Vegemite was foreign-owned.
It's been controlled by Kraft since before he was born.
Mr. Smith believes it is every Australian's patriotic duty to eat Australian.
More particularly things with his face on them.
Our research shows that if Dick Smith is on it, we'll sell the product. They think I'm an Aussie and I support Aussie farmers. I'm a patriot.
Smith says.
And that's the answer to practically everything that's wrong with Australia. Patriotic foods will conquer foreign debt, the branch office economy, even petrol prices. Hugh Mackay is sufficiently irritated by this stuff to raise a point that the salesman patriot may have some difficulty answering.
Isn't there something morally bizarre about encouraging us to resist imports while expecting everyone else to buy our exports?
Hadn't thought of that. Dennis Shanahan thought the threat went even deeper.
There is a darker side to Smith's latest venture that is feeding paranoia and being embraced by political forces that can only damage our national image and interests.
And John Tiedemann wrapped him in the flag, which brings us back to...
Mr. Acting Speaker, we have all lost all our big Australian industries and icons, including Qantas.
If, let's say, the big American companies start discounting, which they could do, they'll run me out of business after about 12 months, but I will have had immense satisfaction and there'll be a strong message to all Australians that we have lost control of our destiny and we ought to be worried.
We do not know who owns what in this country, and it's wrong. I think Australians should know.
You know, the politicians say to me, oh, Dick, you're wrong. It's a world market. Doesn't matter what we sell. And I said, well, let's say we end up with 100% owned overseas. Every business is owned overseas. And we just basically have the crumbs. We rent Australia. Are you telling me that's not a problem?
The Patriot doesn't mind a cheap shot. When a German supermarket chain set up here and its staff were too busy with the launch to give interviews, Smith didn't hesitate to suggest they were Nazis.
Thank you.
Aldi are quite unusual by Australian standards in the way that they don't talk to the media. Now, I believe that is suited to Germany in the 1930s, not to Australia in the year 2001. If they won't be a totally open company, they should go home. In fact, I'm really angry about that.
Ignorance is one thing, opportunistic nastiness is quite another. Good night to you.